The Buccateers podcast is a proud member of the TSP the Timeskew Podcast Network. You can catch our podcast on a number of outlets, including Spotify, Google, Apple, timeskew.com/podcast. And you can follow us on Twitter and YouTube today for Buccaneers updates at Buccateers. Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Buccateers podcast. I'm your host, Tampa Tones. We're joined in by a couple of the crew today, along with a very special guest, Rhett Matthews. We'll bring him in here shortly. He's got a great Buccaneers podcast of his own. He'll talk about that, I'm sure, the Cannon Fire Pod. A lot of you guys are familiar with that. One of the best pods on YouTube, actually, does a lot of great graphics, videography, things of that nature. So go catch up with the Cannon Fire podcast for sure. And we'll let Rhett explain that a little more when we welcome him in. We got a great show tonight. Cody, Stunna, how we doing, crew?
Doing good. Missing football already.
Yeah, every Sunday I'm like, are we going to have another game? Every Monday I'm thinking, are we going to play tonight? So it's just, it still feels like it should be the season, and we're almost at the end of February. I got used to playing games there. Right? I'm sure you did too. You look like you had a great time at the parade. How you doing tonight, my man?
I am doing good. Good to talk to you, fellas.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Yeah, thanks for coming. Real quick, where can the people follow you in your pod on Twitter?
Hell yeah, man. Check me out on Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. Typically, if you follow me, I will follow you back. And then you can check out the podcast, Cannon Fire Podcast, all the places you had mentioned, YouTube, and then anywhere else you download an audio podcast. And then social media too, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Pod. Cannon Fire Podcast. If you search it up, you'll find it. But yeah, check us out there, my friend.
Yeah, how's the podcast been going, and what do you guys got planned coming up? Anything big coming up, or kind of just kicking it in off-season mode at this point?
A little bit of both. We're kind of taking things as they come. This year in particular, it was definitely a different pace for putting out content, just because, like you had mentioned earlier, we're used to wrapping up and kind of planning our season review show first week of December, sometimes end of November. And obviously we had a great playoff run that Tampa Bay had this year, and then the season ending the way that it did. It was a new experience. It was a welcome experience. But as far as right now, we're kind of taking a break. We're kind of not. We got an episode planned next week, and it's an interview with somebody that should be pretty exciting. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of a clean slate. I was thinking we were going to pick back up and really start getting back into the groove of things a couple weeks into March, but we just got to kind of wait and see what happens. When news comes out, we'll definitely be covering it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of off-season mode for a lot of the crew. We got tonight's great show with you. Next week with Mike Evans' brother-in-law, Scott Nolan, a great guy. And then we're kind of going to coast a little bit too, week-to-week type basis when the news happens. So we're glad you could join us tonight. You got a nice creamsicle in the background there. I'm sure we've seen rumors about the Creamsicles. Is it a realistic possibility in your eyes of it coming back? And would you be more than thrilled for the Creamsicles to be back in the arsenal?
Oh, absolutely, man. I think if that collective bargaining agreement goes through and they can agree on changing that helmet rule, I think it's almost certain that those Creamsicles are going to return. I mean, Arians has already talked about it. I think one of his first couple of press conferences, he might have been talking about the Creamsicles. So we know that he's a big fan. A lot of other people, a lot of players have talked about it. Ryan Jensen, who probably is the guy on the roster who would look the coolest in the creamsicle just because of that long orange flowing hair coming out of the back. But no, a lot of guys want to see it come back. I am definitely in that group of people. And I think if they move forward with changing that rule, 100% it'll be back. And I cannot wait for the day because I can update my creamsicle a little bit. Like I got a 99 SAP because SAP is one of those timeless Bucs jerseys, but I'd love to get, a newer player. Like a Devin White in the creamsicle would be pretty damn cool.
Yeah, Devin White creamsicle would be really cool. I got a John Lynch creamsicle. You know, it runs right up there with SAP in terms of great historic players that we can add to the newer players. I had a Freeman creamsicle as well. That didn't turn out too great. I misplaced that one and didn't look for it too good. So 1 for 2 with the creamsicles, but they were a long time part of our franchise. If you mentioned Bruce has mentioned the creamsicles coming back, so it's a very good chance of happening as long as the NFL pretty much does let that happen in terms of the helmet rule. Cody and Stunna, are you guys on the same page? Would you guys like to see the creamsicles back, or do you guys not want them as part of the updated uniforms?
Bro, Creamsicle, that is my favorite jersey, any sport, all time. I definitely want it to come back. And while we have the stacked team, Tom Brady and all, we can get the stink of all the losing we did in the Creamsicles off of us. So I hope it comes back. My wallet probably doesn't hope the Creamsicles make a full comeback, but I definitely do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be buying that merch, and that's a whole nother arsenal of Fanatics branding, merchandise, other merchandise, you know, to take advantage of two creamsicle colors. Stunna, what's your input on the creamsicles? I know you've been a long-time season ticket holder. You've suffered through the Ray Perkins era, etc. Are you looking forward to the creamsicles coming back?
Well, I love the uniform, and I was hoping we would do that with a color rush, maybe go all creamsicle. I know Sam Wash wanted to go all creamsicle at one time, so I've always been a fan of it. And but I know the Glazers don't like the creamsicles, so that's the only hesitation I would have about it for next season.
There were sorry to cut you off, but there were a
No,
couple
go
of
ahead.
mock-ups I had seen, back when people didn't know what the 2020 uniforms were going to look like. There were some mock-ups that I had seen that were basically the same uniforms we have now, with a different number font, but they had a creamsicle variant, and it worked really well because it was orange, it was the creamsicle jersey, but there were little pewter details and just enough red on it to make it work with the pewter helmet. But I think the idea of like an all orange color rush, if they wanted to go that route, I think they definitely could have made it work with the pewter helmet. But like we keep saying, hopefully if that rule gets changed, we'll see him back sooner than later.
Yeah, that would be incredible. The pewter, and I think that was a really good idea too. I seen that picture, I believe, last year, and it kind of stemmed off of their little promo video. I know they included creamsicle in the color. I don't know if you remember that, but the Buccaneers put out that video of like new uniforms coming soon, and all these colors kind of warped into the screen, and creamsicle was one of them. Obviously, not really a part of it now. It could be brought back into the picture, but I think we're all rooting for that. Devin White in a creamsicle, Jensen in a creamsicle, Tom Brady in a creamsicle,
Yeah.
even Bruce Arians in creamsicle colored clothing, man. I mean, that guy could rock it. Could you imagine him in one of those little, man, I forget the name of what you call those hats, but
Angle.
yeah,
Yeah.
that there it is. And one of those creamsicles of that. I mean, come on,
Oh,
you know,
hell yeah.
it'd be some cool stuff. And speaking of cool stuff, you, my friend, brought a goat on a boat during the boat parade, and I had to look twice. I kind of seen it at work, and I was like, yeah, it was kind of one of those things you kind of, and then I'm like, holy crap, a goat was on a boat, and it was just incredible. Explain that experience a little bit more and how that ended up coming to life, being able to bring a goat or the animal version of Tom Brady onto a boat and celebrate the parade for our champions.
Hell yeah, man. It was a great time. The idea came about. I work for a guy named Bubba the Love Sponge, and we own goats. We have some goats behind the station. The one that we brought out there that day was Baby. He is the smaller, easier to handle goat that we have. My buddy Lumix is in charge of them. So he was really the guy holding the goat. I was just there with a megaphone, and I was filming the whole thing. But it was perfect. I mean, shout out. There was a guy, one of Bubba's listeners, who had a 33-foot boat. And, he took us out. He picked us up. It was really last minute, too. Like, we kind of had the idea that morning. And for people to come together and organize it obviously came together perfectly because we really couldn't have picked a better spot because we were right there at the Lombardi toss. And one of my favorite things about it was all the pictures of Brady throwing the trophy were dead center. And I mean, it's kind of funny because unless you know me or you knew it was us, you wouldn't really notice just because it's kind of pixelated. But I mean, to wake up and see that the next day on front page TMZ, Sports Center, House of Highlights, Bleacher Report, all that stuff, that was definitely cool. But no, it was a great time. And on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel, we've got like a good 10, 11-minute video. It's all footage that I took at the parade. We're just going around throwing beads at people, yelling at the players. And, Vita Vea got a kick out of it. I remember Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield Jr. were on the same boat, and they were having a good time with it as well. So I think it was a good response. I will say, like, we were in a really good spot, but I wish a small part of me wishes Brady hadn't thrown the Lombardi right there, because I feel like he would have seen it. Because, I mean, that's the whole reason we brought it out there. We wanted him to see the GOAT and kind of, get a reaction out of him. And, I mean, he didn't even see it because he decided to throw the trophy, which is much of a highlight in itself. And to be honest with you, I kind of want to get a picture of him throwing the trophy with us in the background, and I want it like framed over my desk. You know what I mean? Because that's something I'll remember for the rest of my life. But safe to say, it was probably my best experience as a Bucs fan. It was a damn good time.
Yeah, definitely. And that looked incredible that you guys were lucky enough to be captured in that photo, capsulated or not at some angles. It's just incredible. And I agree with you. I was hoping I was actually going to ask you if Tom Brady was lucky enough to see the GOAT, but that answered my question right then and there. As much of a Kodak moment the trophy throw was, I agree with you. I wish you would have seen the GOAT as well. That would have been really freaking cool based on the damn effort alone. But nonetheless, at least a lot of cool players seen it, such as Vita Vea, Winfield, etc. So job well done in my book. Shout out to Bubba for hooking it up with the big boat and the GOAT. So that's really damn cool. And boat parade seemed to be successful. Cody, I know you were down there right before. What did you think of the whole GOAT on the boat thing?
Dude, that was awesome. That's a GOAT moment to bring a GOAT on the boat. I wanted to ask you, how did the GOAT like the boat? Did he get sick or act crazy or anything?
No, honestly, baby's a trooper, man. He went out to Gasparilla last year in 2020.
Wow.
He's the GOAT that likes doing stuff. Like, you can load him up in the back of the truck and he'll just go anywhere. And he's a very social little guy. Like, it was pretty cool. So he had a good time. The only hurdle we really ran into was every once in a while he'd pee. He'd poop a little bit in the boat, and it wasn't our boat, so we're like, oh well, shit, But no, man, it was good. He had a good time. Towards the end, he got a little bit tired, but we had plenty of food, snacks, and water to keep him healthy. So we made sure he was good, but I'm pretty sure he had fun.
But he's famous now. That GOAT is famous.
Oh yeah, man. He's he's been all over the place. They send him out everywhere. I'm sure we'll have some more stuff planned for him in the future.
Maybe next year when we do it again, he'll get to meet Tom Brady this time.
Yeah, there we go.
Would he have been able to was he only meant for the water, or would this GOAT be traveling if it was, a parade, a normal parade, say, on the streets? Although I don't know, after the Lightning and the Bucs, I don't know if Tampa Bay will go back to normal parades. I think the boat parades perhaps may have taken over for sure.
Yeah, I'm one of these people on the topic of the boat parades. I think they're so damn fun. And I'm glad that I was there on a boat just because Gasparilla did get canceled this year. So, I mean, to get that flotilla experience was pretty fun. But when we had originally planned it, we actually thought we were going to be just walking around. Like, we had thought, okay, we'll take the GOAT and we'll go Curtis Hickson waterfront, and we'll find a good park around Tampa and we'll set up there and we'll just hold them, up in the air because I'm sure they'll see them. But like I said, as last minute as the idea was, somebody else was like, hey, by the way, I've got a boat. And it's funny because that idea in itself even evolved. Like, it started out where we were going to get this boat, but Lummy was going to be on. There's like this dinghy behind the station that we have that they use for the pond. It's just this old little wooden boat. And to be honest with you, if you put it out on open water, like parts of the Hillsborough River, it probably would have ripped in half. But they wanted to tie that behind the 33 foot and have Lummy and the GOAT by themselves. That way they were more noticeable. And then once common sense kicked in and everybody was like, hey, that boat's not going to be able to, withstand the water with a bunch of these other big boats around. So we decided to jump on the bigger boat, and it ended up being a success. But yeah, I mean, it was last minute. It was chaotic, but it ultimately turned out perfectly. And if I had to go back and do it all again, I'd definitely do it the exact same way. Cause like I said, it's a moment I'll remember for a really long time.
Oh yeah, that's a moment to remember forever. You literally made history in a way and got a goat famous, so that's pretty cool, man. A lot of Bucks fans, a lot of Bucks podcasters were like, "Damn, that was some cool shit." So hats off to you, my friend. You made a lot of people's days, especially those who couldn't get to the parade. You added some much needed entertainment, and you made it fun. So we could thank you for that for sure. And once again, we are here with Rhett Matthews on the Buccateers podcast, and we're talking some Buccaneers football. We talked some boat parade, go on a boat, and now we're going to be getting into some Chris Godwin and what he did or what he didn't say. You could find right at the Cannon Fire podcast, and you could catch him on Twitter at Cannon Fire Pod. We heard Godwin talking with Pat McAfee, but it's what he didn't say that perhaps may have stood out more so than what he said. Cody and Stunna, I want to start with you two here first before we get Rhett's opinion on this. Godwin not saying anything with McAfee. Obviously, it was funny watching, them two do that. McAfee was like, oh, shit, is he still on the line? Obviously, some theme dramatics there probably, but is it concerning? Do we think Chris Godwin's going to chase the money? He said money at the end of the day is ultimately important pretty much. So do we think Godwin's going to chase the money or do we not have a problem? I know we could franchise tag him. That's a likely option, and he'd still get paid pretty good there. But after that, we've seen what that could do with some football player relationships.
I'm not concerned with anything that was or wasn't said. What I heard was that he wants to be here. That's what I heard. I've heard the coaches and GM say they want him here. I've heard he wants to be here. He's got to know he's got a chance of getting another ring. So I said all along, I think worst case we franchise tag him. The only if he had flat out said I don't want to be there anymore, I might be worried about it. But I think they their program. He's not going to say much. He's not going to he's not going to say anything too damning or too good or anything like that. I think Chris Godwin's going to be here next year. I think he wants to be here. I think we want him here. So, no, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, Stunna, how about you? What say you? Did you happen to see the McAfee Godwin, and what's your takeaway from their discussion?
Well, what I saw with it was a technical difficulty. I think Godwin is a humble guy, and I think he likes Tampa. But, money talks. So I think possibly the franchise tag would have to go to Godwin if his agent wanted a buck. And but I definitely see us keeping Godwin.
Yeah, he's a special player. He makes some ridiculous catches, and in the playoffs, he had some really big moments. He's had some really great times in just 4 short years with the Bucks, with both Winston, Fitzpatrick, Tom Brady, you name it. Godwin has been there. Rhett, what's your take on Godwin? I know we all want him here. I know franchise tag will happen if it needs to be, but do you see us getting a long-term contract with him done this offseason?
I definitely think they'll try their best. I do think it's a possibility, but you look at everybody else who's kind of eligible to get the tag, and I think Chris Godwin is the most likely candidate, and I think that's the most likely route they go. But when a guy like Chris Godwin says he wants to stay here, I definitely believe him. I think any of those guys on the team who says they want to stay here, I believe them. But the way that Chris Godwin talks about Tampa, everything he said up until this point, I definitely believe him when he says he wants to stay here. Depending on what happens with the cap, depending on how the Bucks address free agency, I don't know if this will be a super exciting free agency. It's funny because I remember saying that last year, and then obviously it was the best free agency offseason the Bucks have ever had. But I don't know. I think a lot of your guys stick around, and for a guy like Chris Godwin, it's either going to be on a long-term deal or the tag, which is obvious at this point. But I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that I really think they're going to, get a long-term deal with him done. But if he ends up on the tag, that's ultimately what happens. There's just a lot of people who seem like they're scared of the Bucs using the tag on someone this year, and it's kind of weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your point there of, you know, I don't think a lot of people expected him to do much last year. And then all of a sudden, what I like about their offseason last year, it was so spread out. I feel like every month they kind of made a big move, or every couple weeks. It wasn't like all at once. It was a Brady thing, boom. Then the Gronk thing happened. Then over the offseason, they brought in LaShawn McCoy in July. Leonard Fournette came along a little bit later, and then Antonio Brown came through midway through the season last year. So we'll see what happens this year. I've seen some reports of maybe them trying to make a little splash, and nothing huge and nothing crazy. But obviously, we have a lot to take care of in-house, and we know how things get after winning a Super Bowl. Guys get overpaid. A lot of guys get offered big contracts elsewhere, although all these Bucs deserve big contracts. But we talked last episode with Stank Bastard of the Loose Cannons. We talked with him about how we overpaid Bo Allen, Vinny Curry. You know, things happen. So it's very possible guys like Nunez Roaches get paid very good money somewhere else. Obviously, guys like that we might have to consider. But, yeah, I think Godwin and the Bucs really try and get at something. I think they both know there's a lot of longevity, a lot of long-term success possible here between the two. We already seen what happened this far between the two, and he's had 3 different quarterbacks. So anyone from Fitzmagic to Jameis to Brady, 3 very different quarterbacks there too. He's had success with all of them. So Brady here for a couple more years. After that, Godwin could really help a young quarterback grow. I think that's a very good thing. And these Penn State guys at the pro level, a lot of them become great football players. Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Donovan Smith. There's a lot of Penn State guys who become reputable at the pro level. So, you know, we got Godwin, and that's very good. I would like him to be here a long time.
One thing, just to butt in real quick.
Go ahead, Cody.
I don't know that Godwin has a bigger fan than Bruce Arians. Like from day one, I remember before Bruce Arians even came here, said Godwin can be 100 catch a year wide receiver, and he has done nothing but sing his praises. And it's not just catching the football; it's blocking, what he does off the field, the locker room. So, yeah, I don't see it any way, shape, or form that Godwin in here next year. Arians loves him. I'm sure Light does too. Brady has spoken nothing but highly of him, and he's an important part to our offense. We see the difference, like when he was out, when he was injured, like there's so many different things he can do and do it so well. Like you find a guy like that later in the draft. Like good teams don't let in-house talent like that go. You have to. I know paying 2 wide receivers is tough, but it's not impossible. You can't let someone like that go. That young, that good. I don't think he's reached his potential yet either. It's a scary part for the rest of the league. So yeah, I think really good.
I think the Bucs are going to do their part to move some money around. I think there's going to be a couple of guys on this roster this coming off season that people are going to have to get comfortable with maybe not being here next season. I think maybe a guy like Cam Brate is one of those guys.
Yeah. Damn it.
Will Golston could maybe be one of those guys. He talked about Nacho getting money somewhere else, even though he wasn't, a huge cap hit. But if they move money around to keep a guy like Godwin, I'm glad you mentioned his blocking as well, just because he's a great fundamental wide receiver, man. Like he is a number 1 wide receiver on 30 out of 32 teams in the NFL. And he's definitely a guy that you'd like to have around. And he's probably one of those top of the totem pole guys as far as like Jason Light's draft record goes as well. He's got plenty of great moments. I remember early on in the playoffs, people were pretty quick to turn on him because he had a case of the dropsies those first 2 games. But, shit happens. He bounced back and ultimately is a Super Bowl champion. And it's funny, too, because, I worry more about a guy like Antonio Brown than I do Chris Godwin as far as if they're going to be here next year, because I'm kind of 50-50 on AB. I think there's just as good of a chance that a team takes a limb and pays him good wide receiver money. But I also feel like there's a chance he takes a really team-friendly contract to sit here and play with Tom Brady, because him and Tom Brady are that close. And, I mean, he knew this was his last chance. The Bucs gave him that last chance. And just like Chris Godwin, he is a champion because of it. So, we'll see what happens, but Chris Godwin's definitely a guy that you want on your team, and a guy that personally I would take over someone like AB, even though he is widely regarded as one of the best wide receivers the last 10 years. The way this offense goes with Chris Godwin on the field, you don't really need Antonio Brown out there, and we've seen them perform without him on the field.
Yeah, I think Tyler Johnson, last offseason he was hurt. He missed a lot of camp. I think another offseason working with Tom Brady like that, I'm sure they'll do back to high school or whatever. I don't think we'll skip a beat. AB's a great player, and this is no disrespect to AB, but just with our wide receiver room, if we get Godwin back, Johnson, Scotty Miller, I think we're fine. I would take Godwin all day, any day over AB, just off-field issues, age, on-field production. Like, I know Godwin's going to be a lot more expensive, but there's a reason for that. He's worth it. The one I'm still worried about is Shaq. I still think if we find a way with him, but like we really got to get Shaq back. I mean, we've got to be able to rush the passer. We really need Shaq next year. So that's the one, I don't know, I guess most concerned to me. Godwin, I think, is back. Gronk, if he wants to play again, I think he'll be back fairly cheap. I'm with you about Brait. I love Brait as a person, player, but he's one I could see not being here. Sue's another important one, but if it's between, say, Sue or Shaq, you got to get Shaq back. We've got to find a way to get Shaq back.
Who would you guys ultimately rather part with then for cap casualty before we move on here in a little bit? But who would you guys rather see move way or part ways as a tight end, O.J. Howard or Cam Brait? We've seen what Howard could do a little bit. We've seen a full season of Brait and a playoffs of Brait. For this offense heading into next season, would you rather see O.J. Howard be tight end number 2 or, assuming Gronk's back, would you rather see Howard as tight end number 2 or would you rather see Brait as tight end number 2?
I think it's got to be OJ here, and I think if you're the Bucs, you think the same thing. As much as we do love Cam Brait and as faithful as he has been to Tampa Bay, not only from a money standpoint, but just from a pure athlete standpoint, OJ Howard really seemed like early in the season, him and Brady developed a pretty good chemistry. He's a very big, freakishly athletic guy. He's fast, and Cam is definitely Mr. Reliable. He's the check down, first down guy when you need him to be, but that big play ability that OJ possesses, he's a better blocker than Cam Brait is, and that factors into that tight end room as well. So I think from that standpoint and just kind of where you stand with OJ's contract and the work left to be done, you roll the dice, you take a chance on a guy that has already shown plenty of great flashes. I know the staying healthy is also part of it, but if I'm the Bucs, I just take OJ there.
Yeah, Cody, how about you? Do you agree with the OJ over Brait argument?
I definitely agree with every point he made. I think he is a better player, more explosive, definitely a better blocker. Nobody could argue that. But the injuries are concerning. The only thing to me would maybe be like, could we maybe trade him, get a draft pick for OJ, something like that. That would, maybe hinge on that. But I love Cam Brait. I absolutely, and there's no disrespect to him whatsoever, but I just think we've seen flashes, and I felt like this was the year that OJ was going to put it all together. His ceiling is just so. Cam Brait, he's reached his ceiling, and there's nothing wrong with that. Where we got him, we have gotten great play from him, but his ceiling and OJ's ceiling, it's not even in the same room. I mean, OJ just, but again, hopefully he can stay healthy. But I'd hate losing Brait. I would absolutely hate to lose Cam Brait.
If Cam ultimately does go, at least his last catch as a Buccaneer will be when he caught the Lombardi.
Yeah, you can't overlook that. Some people, like the original people who told me said Gronk caught it. I'm like, no, Brait caught that. You can't discredit Brait. That was an incredible catch. I mean, that's a lot of skill. And then we've seen that mini toss too, I think, from Evans to Ryan Griffin, if I'm not mistaken. They had a mini toss perhaps, but that Brait catch is awesome. Stunna, Brait or Howard, if you had to choose one on this team next year, who you got?
I'm going to go with Cam Brait. Cam played injured for us, and Cam has been reliable, and Cam, made plays in the Super Bowl season. Now, OJ really looked good in that Denver game. He finally showed some hands, but he's had a lot of drops. And I don't know how many 16-game schedules OJ's given us. I felt like we reached OJ even with the 19th pick, even though, he's a phenomenal looking player, but the production just hasn't, we haven't got the 19th pick out of that. And you could actually, you would think OJ has more trade value than Cam Brate. And then, so they're basically both making a relatively, similar contract next year. So I would try to move on from OJ, even though I love OJ. But if I had to make that choice, I would move on from OJ, try to get some draft capital back out of him, and just move on with Brate as tight end number 2. And also, Bruce Arians doesn't really use the tight ends that much.
Yeah, and it's so tough because I feel like everyone really wishes we could have, a Gronk, Brate, Howard tight end room and, be able to afford all these guys, but that's just very hard to do. Is all three of these guys could be tight end ones on a lot of teams around the NFL. They're all different prototype tight ends. It's tough because Brate developed that whole season relationship with Brady, but I think we all are in the same boat as OJ Howard, being a little younger, a little more explosive perhaps. The nice thing with Brate is it does seem like him and Brady are tight at the hip. We've seen that post-boat video of him and Brate kind of walking off, having that little talk after Ryan Griffin helped Brady off the boat. So.
Don't forget Ryan Griffin holding them up the entire time it happened too.
Yeah, Ryan Griffin was being, Brady's walker, you could say, so to speak. Yeah, he was helping him through things. Shout out to Ryan Griffin for that, though. I mean, what a job for this guy. He gets to be a backup QB. Last year, he comes in during the Colts game, throws a couple of passes, disappears into the night, gets another contract from the Buccaneers, comes back, third strings to Brady and Gabbert, and next thing you know, he's known as Brady's holder up, or however the hell you want to put it. But that shirt's cool too. The shirt that people have of Brady with Griffin in the background. Yeah. So I know Brady, that little music video or that hype video he put out, him, Gabbert, Griffin, they look like they all had a fun day on that boat. I'd love to be hanging out with that quarterback room, but yeah, Griffin, shouts out to Ryan Griffin. He deserves a lot of props for, taking care of Brady. He could have fell in the water. Our goat was on the tequila, the avocado tequila. Yeah, a lot of things could have happened. And that Florida sun, that's not a joke. I know you guys know all about that.
Yeah. Hey, I saw a thing about Ryan Griffin the other day. It was either like 7 or 8 million, I think he's made in his career, and it said how many passes he's attempted. But man, what an awesome job! Make $7-8 million. You're not doing much. You got Tom Brady and Blaine Gabbert. You're not going to play, so you just get to go to boat parades, hang out with Tom Brady.
There is a guy on Instagram. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or not, but he has a fan page called Griffin Greatness. And it is a Ryan Griffin fan page. And he has been a Ryan Griffin fan page for, I think, 3 seasons, 3 or 4. He's been around for a little while. So it's funny because we talk about Ryan Griffin in this light of he's a third string quarterback and he's the guy that held Brady in the picture. But he's a guy that I've, had a lot of information about over these past 3 seasons, whether I really wanted to or not. So it's funny because he's become – that dark horse of the team. And I think the guy who's underappreciated, even though he's thrown 3 career passes. I mean, it's funny, but shout out to number 4, holding steady. He's been around for a little while.
Yeah, I've actually reached out to number 4 because I got a man cave. I collect memorabilia. I won his My Cause, My Cleats from this past season. So I'm like, hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to win these. He liked the tweet. So he's a nice guy. He's a cool guy. And one of my buddies from home, John Vanderwatt, shout out to you. He hangs with a lot of the Bucks, whether it's Griffin, Brate, they're all good guys. So Ryan Griffin's just another one of these dudes who's respected in the community. He's got a fan page out there. I know a couple collectors actually collect his football cards and, jerseys when they can. So Griffin's got a couple of collectors out there for throwing. He might have more collectors than passes thrown in the NFL out there. So that's pretty incredible. But he's one of those guys that a lot of people like. And, his jersey still holds value. But his game-used jersey from London last year went for $800, if I'm not mistaken, which is, that's a pretty penny for a game-worn jersey. So, Ryan Griffin, thank you. You do hold value to a lot of us. But as we get into the back half, the back portion, the last couple segments of the Buccateers tonight in the last 20 minutes or so of this great podcast with our friend Rhett, who was we had lucky enough to join us tonight. We're going to play a little free agency games. I know we've talked it a little bit already to this point, but the first one we're going to do is long-term, short-term franchise tag. We're going to take our 3 biggest free agents. We're all going to go through and say who we would franchise, who we would give a long-term contract to, and which one would get the short-term contract. So between Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and Chris Godwin, long-term, short-term franchise tag. Cody, we'll start with you and then bounce to Rhett, over to Stunna, and top it off with me. Cody, who are you going with long-term, short-term franchise out of Godwin, Shaq, and Levante David?
So what I think is going to happen, I think Shaq's going to get a long-term. I think Godwin's going to get franchised. And Levante, I'm thinking they probably sign him like 3 years would be my guess. I'm guessing that would be my short-term. And I don't know, like me personally, like I wouldn't argue with that. I like the thought of that. I think they give Shaq 5 years, guessing 4 or 5 years, probably roughly 18 a year, something like that. And Levante, I think I saw people are predicting he's going to get around 12 million a year, something like that, which he's got to retire Buck. You got to do whatever you can. Like, not only does he deserve to retire Buck, but you can't break him and Devin White up. That's the best linebacker duo in the league. He's a leader. He's still the heart and soul. I don't know if I would call him the heart and soul of this defense anymore, but he's a huge part of this defense. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of how it's going to shake out.
I don't think Devin White would be the linebacker he is without Levante David. I think somebody else said that today in a quote. But no, I kind of didn't want to agree with you. I wanted to say that Levante, deserves a long-term deal, but at the same time, when you watch Levante David play, he doesn't play like somebody who's been in the league for almost 10 years, and so when you think about that aspect of how much longer can he really play, I think he can obviously play till he's like 35 if he really wanted to. But I think it does make sense. And so I'll agree with you there, Cody. I think Levante does get the short-term deal. I think they pay him well, but I just don't think it's going to be any longer than, a 3 or a 4 year. I think Shaq Barrett, they're going to try their best to get that long-term deal done. I think he definitely deserves it. He played his best football when it mattered the most. I know on our podcast, we were kind of, a lot of throughout the season, we were like, well, where's Shaq Barrett? Because he had a respectable season. He finished with 7, 8 sacks, 8, 9 sacks, somewhere around there.
Third pressures, I think, second or third in total.
Yeah,
pressures.
So it's not that he didn't have a good season, because let's face it, he's probably getting double teamed a hell of a lot more than he was when he, came out on the hot tear that he did last season. But he showed up when it mattered. And the way that he and Jason Pierre-Paul play when a guy like Vita Vea is in the game, I think he deserves to get paid the money that he thinks he's worth. And then I think Chris Godwin obviously gets the franchise tag. We kind of talked about it earlier, but as far as preserving this team, keeping your core in there, I think the tag for Godwin only makes sense. And hopefully they do a good job of keeping that core together, because the Bucs are in a different situation this year than they really have ever been. I don't know about ever, because they won the Super Bowl once before. But when's the last time we talked about an offseason and we weren't talking about potential free agents to fix a weakness somewhere? We're kind of talking about, well, who off of the Super Bowl team are we going to have to give up, because you got to get up somebody. So they're in a different situation this year. And we'll see how they handle it. But I agree with Cody in the way that those things shake out.
Yeah, that seems like a very likely scenario amongst many. Stunna, do you agree, or do you see it playing out differently?
Well, the way I see it playing out is probably going to lose Shaq. But, as far as the three free agents, the age-wise, you want to give Godwin the long-term deal because he's the youngest player. And you look at Levante David, you definitely want to give him a short-term deal because you don't know how long he can continue to play, because he's long in the tooth. And then you don't want to really franchise Shaq 2 years in a row,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would piss him off, kind of like Not saying he did great elsewhere, but kind of like a Kirk Cousins scenario. You could almost see Dak Prescott heading down that route with the Cowboys, where if they do franchise tag him this year, he probably won't even reconsider going back next year when he's off the books. So yeah, Shaq, I really doubt he wants that tag again. Obviously, he's made it clear, more than clear, his wife is as well, that he does want that long-term deal, one way or another. Jacksonville did, make one of those hires this offseason that could cost them Shaq, though. But Urban Meyer, not a lot of people at the pro level think he could get it done. I don't think Shaq would like playing for a guy like Urban Meyer, to be honest. Jacksonville was rumored for Shaq because he does like the state of Florida. Hopefully he could stay in Tampa. If I see it playing out, I do agree with Rhett and Cody as the three scenarios. I think Levante gets JPP type from the Bucs, a 2-year but paid well. I think they'll give him 2 years and paid well. I think they're really going to keep this core together for like 2 more years. I'd love to see Levante be a Buck for his whole career, his whole life. But, we'll see what happens after 2 years. I think 2 years is a magic number for a guy like him. I think we're going to really compete. Brady's going to extend another year, hopefully give us another 2-year window. And then I think we franchise Godwin, and as we franchise tag him, hopefully we could keep talking to him about a long-term deal. Hopefully we don't shut talks down and say we'll resurface next offseason. No, let's keep working at that shit. Let's keep talking. Let's get a long-term deal done. One of the better wide receivers in the game. Blocking ability, as you guys said, he does a lot off the field too. He has his own foundation, just a great guy in general. Couple fans turn on him for dropping balls, but a lot of those fans – they come to jump off the boat, on the boat. They're all sorts of crazy on Bucks Twitter.
Yeah,
Then
after you get the ring, nobody's talking about the drops, in the first playoff game
No.
or two.
No, I think it was 2 drops in one game and one in the other. But that catch,
Godwin's always struggle with the Redskins.
yeah, whatever you call them, Redskins football team. That's a game he struggled. But that catch against Green Bay, that was life or death there. That was a hell of a catch when they threw it up to him and he was able to come down with that. So there were plenty of times where he bailed us out in these playoffs. He had a lot of great plays throughout the season, obviously. And let's not forget the type of things he played through this year, too. He was banged up time and time again. He had hand surgery, and he was back, I think a week late. He took a week off only.
I think that was the issues with the drops. He had just gotten those screws taken out of his finger, and his fingers were like taped together. He catches his ball with his hands. A lot of those guys you see it catch with their bodies and everything else. I think that guy doesn't just start dropping passes, 3-4 years into his career. What Tom Brady says, he's got the best hands he's ever seen. So he's seen what he can do in practice. I don't think it was nerves with Chris Godwin. I think it was just the injury that's what caused that issue. And I have no concerns with him going forward as far as the drops.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a lot of fans could agree with that. His hand, that was very – if you were actually to see his hand, you would even be like, how the hell is this guy playing? It didn't look human that he was able to play after that hand surgery. And he pretty much had, if you were to put his season together, it was incredible the things he was able to do with that. And Mike Evans has helped him a lot too. So shout out to Mike for helping Chris become the guy he is. Obviously, we've seen it time and time again. And a real quick tribute to Vincent Jackson as he helped Mike become the guy he is. We all miss you, VJ, too. So, Bucks have had good luck with receivers over the past 9 to 10 years or so, especially lately. So it's been a while there, but when we got VJ to Mike Evans to Chris Godwin, things really started looking up. Before that, they were not. So it's interesting to see the state of this franchise. We got some other free agents, though, fellas. Gronk, Sue, Fournette, Rhett, I want to get your opinion. AB, out of those 4 guys, all the veterans, Sue, Gronk, Fournette, and AB, who do you see coming back? Who do you see leaving?
I think Sue's kind of 50-50. I had expected him to retire, to be honest with you. He came back and said he's ready for more, ready to make another run at it. And I think he can, because the last season of football he showed us was definitely a step up from anything he's put on the field these last, 4 years, maybe aside from a year or two in LA. But, I think Sue is 50-50. Personally, I think Leonard Fournette walks. I know they talked about the snap count not really being a problem for him, but I just think there's another team that's going to pay for him. And kind of like with everybody else in the NFL, I think Stunna said it. Cash talks, man. And there's going to be a team that's going to overpay for a running back. And I think that running back would be Leonard Fournette. Gronk, I think Gronk sticks around on team-friendly deals as long as Tom Brady is playing football. I really do. As long as he's feeling good, which he is. We talked to Chris Gronkowski the week of the Super Bowl, and we asked him about, just Gronk's training regimen this year, the freedom that he has in Tampa Bay to, manage his body that he didn't necessarily have in New England, because in New England, he told us he played hurt a lot of the times. And I mean, he played hurt to where maybe he shouldn't have been practicing that week, but he was practicing that week. Bruce Arians has done a really good job of kind of delegating and allowing, certain players to just come to him and say, listen, I don't feel like practicing today. And, that's the type of coach Bruce is. He's 68 years old. So you're going to have stuff like that with your veteran players. But when it's working as well as it is, and then Gronk obviously showing up a lot faster than I thought he would this season. I think he's in good shape. I think he feels good. And as long as Brady's here, I think he is here. But yeah, AB, we had talked about. I'm also 50-50 on it. I think another team will pay AB, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I think the Chris Godwin news will definitely be telling.
Yeah, that'll kind of dictate the outcome of what we do with AB. Perhaps they could both be back for sure too, but if we lose Godwin or something along those lines, AB is almost for sure to be back. I agree with your scenarios exactly, though. Myself, I think Fournette's going to get paid that big money that he's been looking for. I mean, he's a running back. We see how short paydays could be for running backs. He's already going to be entering year number 5 in the NFL, so it's one of those things where, he's slowly turning the clock. He's looking for that big payday. Now he might get it. He's a guy that we don't need to overpay either, as we have Rojo. We have our 3rd-round pick from last year, Keyshawn Vaughn. So between those two guys, and I'm sure we're going to add a pass-catching back on the cheap, or we're going to draft a pass-catching back. So between one of those two things, we're going to get a pass-catching back in here, and we're going to have a nice little 3 backs there. So as much as we love playoff Lenny, I bought a Super Bowl jersey. I do think he will be out the door as well. I just don't think we could keep him in the budget for what he's going to demand. And I admit he should get his payday. He's a running back. He's won a Super Bowl ring now. He took a very bad Jaguars team to a good Jaguars team before that fell apart. Leonard Fournette's been through some very good things in his short career in the NFL. He's been through some adversity as well. He didn't get snaps halfway through the year. He went inactive at one point in time, and now he's a Super Bowl champion. So go get your payday, Leonard Fournette. I'd love to have you back, though. So if you do want to stay for cheap, feel free, my man. We'd love you in Tampa. I think Sue, to me, it's either retire or stay a Buck. I think he could go either way. He does his personal life. He's getting married.
He's had a baby.
Yeah, he just had a baby. His family's starting up. So I really can't blame Sue, a guy who's been at it for 11 seasons now. He was an all-pro even before the NFL. Nebraska was a highly touted prospect. Came in to this thing as a monster. He's going to leave the league a monster no matter what. He's won a Super Bowl with the Bucs, been to one with the Rams. Him and Gerald McCoy were back-to-back in that 2010 draft. Ever since then, Sue, as much as I love McCoy's my dude, but Sue has kind of been the more prolific of the two. The stats are very good for each, but for whatever reason, Sue's name holds weight. And we just see his nastiness, his grittiness on the field. I'd love him back. I really hope he's back, but with his family stuff, I could see him retiring. Hopefully, if we do bring him back, it's on an incentives-based contract for cheap. I did see that Chris Gronkowski interview That was pretty cool on the Cannon Fire podcast. So be sure to check that out if you guys missed that. But that gives me, good hopes and spirits that Gronk will be back as long as Brady's playing. And I do, too, believe that Gronk will not go anywhere else besides play with Brady. He has no reason to. I've seen that talking head pundit Ninkovich, say Gronk is going to go to Miami, I think he said. Get the hell out of here. Gronk is
that's just, that's where Gronk is in his career. He doesn't really view himself, at least, from what I think. I don't know what he thinks, but I don't think he views himself as a guy who's going to go and just be a tight end one for just any team. I mean, he's a multi-time Super Bowl champion, just won his fourth. So, he definitely has a little bit more respect for himself than to, go to Miami. Not to say that it's not a promising situation down there. I just don't see him playing anywhere but with Tom Brady. And whether Tom Brady decides to pack up and go to San Fran after his contract is over and he's 45, 46 years old, maybe Gronk goes with him, but I just don't see that happening.
That'd be incredible if he plays past his, either next year or if he does extend another year. God bless him, 46. But I don't see him and Gronk, rallying to California either. That would be crazy, though. Incredible story. Antonio Brown, I think perhaps he stays. I think he's at the point where he wants to play with Tom Brady as well, and I think he knows he's going to get that big payday, in a year, next year perhaps, if he waits it out and keeps playing with Brady and keeps quiet on the field and producing. I think AB comes back on a cheap incentives contract. Cody, how do you see these four shaking out?
I agree with you guys with Gronk's. He said numerous times how much fun he's had, and he's not going to play with anyone but Brady. I think had Brady retired, I think Gronk would still be retired. So he's having fun with his friend. So, yeah, I definitely think he's back. Sue, his feelings could change as the offseason goes on, but he said he wants to come back and go for another one. So I'm going to take him at his word there. I think we find a way to sign, him and Gronk, take team-friendly, maybe incentive-laden deals, and I think they're both back. Leonard, I think, is gone. We've talked about that a few times on the pod. He's going to get paid. We can't afford to pay him. Not to say we don't need him, but we don't need to pay him. That would mean, I think the difference in signing him would be losing Sue and Gronk or, something like that. AB, I had said all along, I think he stays for cheap with Brady, but I don't know, man. Here lately, I'm kind of thinking, I think someone like maybe Green Bay or somebody's going to offer him a lot of money. He's getting older, so this might be his last chance at like a true big payday. So I think, if a team comes with like a 3-4 year deal with a lot of money, I think he'll take that. But if, he's not getting many calls or not getting good offers, then I think he'll try and stay with the Bucs.
Yeah, and I'd really be interested to see, those offers and stuff, because we obviously seen what happened in his short-lived time in Buffalo and then Oakland and then, New England. That was kind of a really crazy thing. He denied a trade to Buffalo. They ended up getting Diggs out of it, so they ended up fine. Oakland ended up without a top receiver. Then New England lost him quick. So hopefully if AB does leave, he can keep the right thing. He had a hell of a time with the Bucs, and I want him back. I think we all do. But if he does leave, hopefully he keeps the right head on his shoulders. Stunna, how do you see these four playing out before we wrap it up with our last question?
Well, I'll take Sue and Gronk at their words. They said they wanted to come back to Tampa. Fournette, I think the only reason he signed with us is because he got some money from Jacksonville when they cut him. And I think he's only going to play at a certain dollar amount. And I don't think we were ever going to offer that dollar amount. So I think he knew all along it's kind of like a 1-year deal. And then AB, I thought originally that he might come back with us, but the way he talked in the interviews that he was going to play the process out, I think he might try to get that one last paycheck. But if it doesn't work out, we'd love to have him back. But I see us going 2 out of 4 on these guys.
Yeah, I hope at least 3, but 2 is probably a possibility given the big 3 free agents we already covered. We have a couple reserve O-line free agents as well. Once again, as we wrap up with our last question, we are here with Rhett Matthews from the Cannon Fire podcast. It's been an incredible night talking Buccaneers so far to this point. As we wrap up, One last question on the table. We all obviously know he's pretty much gone, but LaShawn McCoy now has back-to-back Super Bowls with this Buccaneers and Chiefs team these past 2 years. Do you guys see him retiring? I personally don't think there's anything left in the tank for him. Rhett, you see LaShawn walking into the distance. I know he's not going to be a Buck next year for sure, but do you think he latches on somewhere and tries to keep playing?
No, I think just like Sue, a lot of the ingredients are there. What better way to go out than 2 Super Bowls in a row? It's a shame he didn't play a snap in either of them. So I think that might be digging at him as well. Like, yeah, he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, but he really wasn't a pivotal role. And it's a shame because he's, past that point in his career where he can be that pivotal running back, but he served his purpose for Tampa Bay this season. I think his effect on that running back room went far beyond, anything that anyone saw at a surface level. You heard Ronald Jones have nothing but great things to say about him. Leonard Fournette, I know, was talking great about him. And I don't know if you guys listen to Pardon My Take or any of the Barstool podcasts, but he was on Pardon My Take not that long ago, talking everybody up, and he's just a good locker room guy to have. And I think that's the role that he's going to fill, whether it's here in Tampa Bay or anywhere else he goes. So I think for him, it'll be, whatever decision he decides to make. But if there is a time to hang it up, I don't know if there's a better time than this one. And I don't mean for that to sound harsh, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to get at here. I mean, 2 Super Bowls in a row, playing on some of the best teams in recent history and helping do a good job. I credit him a lot with, Ronald Jones kind of playing the way that he did this year. We saw flashes last season, but I think LaShawn McCoy, his impact on the running back room and the Bucs organization is definitely felt far beyond what he did on the field, and anywhere else he goes, I think it'll ultimately be the same.
I was really hoping, too, when we were up kind of big late in the game against his old team, that we at least let him get a couple snaps in at running back against the Kansas City team that didn't let him get any snaps at running back. I was hoping for LaShawn to get a couple Super Bowl snaps, but it didn't happen. I agree with you, though. I think it'd be cool to have him back on a vet minimum if he wants to, but I think it's a perfect time for him to retire after winning 2 Super Bowls with, really good numbers, potential Hall of Fame resume. Cody, what's your thoughts on LaShawn McCoy? Is he done in the NFL?
I agree with you guys. I think, it's probably time. There's no better time to walk away. And I don't mean any disrespect to him at all when I say this, but I don't think teams are going to be just lining up to sign him anyway. He basically hasn't played the last 2 years. There's a reason for that. His best days are long behind him. He was an awesome signing. Like you guys said, what he did for the team, the way the guys around him spoke about him, he served his purpose. He was worth the money. So, maybe barring someone getting hurt in training camp or something like that, and, him getting another opportunity like he had with us or the Chiefs, I don't really think so. He's also, he's a well-spoken guy. I think he could have a job in a booth somewhere, so that, that might be part of it too. People might come call and be an analyst or an announcer or whatever. So
He'll be a Barstool guy. I don't know. I get that feeling from him because he's pretty witty. He's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think they'll reel him in and they'll pay him good money to go over there and start a podcast or something.
Yeah. He had a great career, man. Awesome. He seems, by all accounts, he's an awesome dude. Had a great career. He's got 2 rings. I mean, when he first came out, he was one of the most electric running backs I've seen. So, I wish him nothing but success, whatever he does. But, he won't be here. I mean, obviously it's not up to me, but I would be absolutely shocked if we brought him back here. So, would a guy like that want to go from like I said, if, maybe a sure enough contender wanted him, but I don't see him going to like Detroit or something like that. He's not, I just don't see why he would do something like that. So, I think he's done. But either way, I appreciate his time with us and wish him well.
Yeah, I agree. We wish him well, whatever he does. Stunna, do you agree with us, or do you see LaShawn perhaps coming back somehow? Stunna? We may have lost Stunna here, but that's okay. I think we're all.
I'm here. What happened?
Oh, no, you're good. Just the LaShawn McCoy thing. What are your thoughts on LaShawn?
I think he's going to get forced out of the NFL. He's lost a step, I know. But he's been a great influence, in the locker room, and I'm glad he was part of our team this year. But somebody might sign him like a Frank Gore situation, but I think eventually he'll get forced out of the NFL just because of the declining talent.
Yeah, I agree. Two-time Super Bowl champ, and he's kind of a little older now too. So I think it's a perfect time, especially with the declining talent. We talked a lot about all types of Bucks free agents tonight. Just about everyone talked about a goat on a boat, the creamsicle uniforms, just a bunch of great things. Rhett, thanks once again, for joining us tonight, my man. It's been a lot of fun. The crew talking some Bucks football with you. We hope to have you on again soon.
Hell yeah, brother. I talk to you guys on Twitter all the time, and you're popping up in my timeline. So it was good to finally, put some faces to the names and get to talk to you guys. I had a really good time, and, always down to talk some Bucks ball. So thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks a lot for coming, dude. It was definitely fun talking with you.
Yeah, Rhett, how do you feel about missing the combine, man? Isn't that a bummer?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pivotal part. It's kind of weird how this entire offseason process is going to play out. Bruce Arians said in his press conference today, like, as far as we know, nothing about this offseason is going to be normal. And I think that's the expectation moving forward. But you're going to miss some stuff that kind of reminds you what time of year it is. And that part's going to suck, but they'll make up for it. I mean, we'll get, plenty of pro day footage, I'm sure, if those guys are going out. But it's definitely a fun part of the offseason that I enjoy watching. Like, there's nothing like having the combine on in the background and just, I don't know, just checking in every once in a while. Like, it's just that time of the year, but I'll definitely miss it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will miss it. I think, we got to study what Senior Bowl coverage and go to individual tapes and things of that sort. We've seen it last year with the NFL draft. I do some draft interviews with Time Skew. We interviewed some smaller school guys. It was damn impossible for them to even get drafted. We only had 7 small school guys get drafted because of no combine last year. To define small school, it's pretty much not BCS. It's pretty much, FCS or D2, D3, and JUCO. Usually there's about 20 to 27 of those guys drafted in each draft. Last year there was only 7. So we've seen what happened last year. Again, it may piggyback into this year. We'll see. Maybe we could have a draft episode with Rhett when the time comes. That'd be a lot of fun. Once again, you listen to the Buccateers podcast, a member of the TSPN. We've had a great time chatting football with you guys tonight. Until next week with Scott, Mike Evans' brother-in-law, it's been Rhett and the crew. We're out tonight. As always, go Bucks.